Well, Chris and Rob, let's do our post-game Emmy analysis. But before we do, I have to congratulate Chris here for being the pundit with the most correct answers by far. You really nailed it this year, Chris. Congratulations.
Well, thanks. That first hour of the show, I hadn't missed a category yet, and I started thinking, what in the world is going on? And then, of course, all those drama categories hit, and then it got to be a lot more difficult. But it was a fun night. Yeah.
What did you think, Rob?
Yeah, it was. It was a really good show, I have to say. I think it was really entertaining and it was really fast-paced. I didn't notice normally I get a bit bored towards the middle of it, and it was, it went along quite well. And although I didn't do so well in my predictions, I never do, really. So I wasn't expecting to do
You beat us both in the past many times. I think it's fair to say that we've traded off between the three of us with pretty regularity of one of the three of us evenly winning here. Chris just rebounded spectacularly, so we're all pretty good at this game, but boy, this year was a shocker. Wow.
Well, the way the Emmys are done, too, with the episodes and the panels and different panels on different categories, it is probably the toughest major award show to predict. And I always look not just at who won and how I did, but did I have a lot of my second place people win, because that means that I was basically evaluating the categories right. There were only maybe two or three where I felt like I was way off base, because we all had Kyra Sedgwick in second place.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We had who else? We had Bryan Cranston up pretty high.
Yeah, pretty high, but still not in first or second place. What do you say?
Yeah.
Pipe in here, Rob.
Well, we all thought Aaron Paul had a pretty good shot, but I think we can all fairly say that we weren't seeing Archie Punjabi or Top Chef, and when those two things were announced, I was like, what? I was really happy, don't get me wrong, but where did they come from?
Well, do you think the Archie Punjabi victory came from the bonus points phenomenon we talk about here very often, which is when you're nominated against a co-star, you get extra face time? It certainly probably helped Eric Stonestreet. It certainly helped in the past stars like Felicity Huffman win for Desperate Housewives. We've talked about that. And it's helped Edie Falco probably when she was nominated against Lorraine Bracco for The Sopranos. Could that have been a factor behind the Archie upset?
I think so. I think definitely you're right, Tom. I always call that the Felicity Huffman rule, because this is very similar. Archie Punjabi, it doesn't do much in her episode. We've already talked about this, but obviously she had two episodes really to submit, because you very correctly reminded both Chris and I the other day that the rule had changed a couple of years ago, and supporting players don't have their episodes cut down like everybody in the whole world has been saying over the last week, incorrectly I might add. So we have to watch all of the episode now. And so Archie Punjabi got to submit two, and so did Christine Baranski. Obviously, a lot of the voters obviously just really love her character, and you can see why. She's one of the favourite characters on the show. And so you're completely right. There has to be it, because if it's not that, I don't have an answer for you.
Yeah, and let's clarify something here before we go any further, which is it used to be that in the supporting races, the stars submitted 2 sample episodes. They had to edit out the scenes they weren't in, and they were on one reel. Now everybody submits one, just as they do in the lead category. So when Rob is talking here about her having 2 episodes, the reference is, of course, to Archie appearing both on her episode and Christine Baranski's. You were going to say something?
But having watched the episodes and kind of knowing, a little bit about how the Emmy voters work, and I would have bet money. If you told me one of the Good Wife women was going to win 100%, I would have said Christine Baranski.
Yeah,
that makes a whole lot more sense based on the history of this category, and she's a previous Emmy winner. I would have never have guessed
come on.
that, and I'm very happy for her. She's good. She's good.
Yeah, but we all know we Americans are suckers for foreign accents. I mean, her British accent is the only reason she won the Emmy. The only reason we have Rob Licuria on this webcam is he's got that Aussie accent, which just makes us feel so inferior. Let's just put it out there.
Yeah, look,
All right,
we sound so intelligent, but anyway.
No, it's exotic to us. So we automatically bow to it. It's one of our cultural inferiorities here among Yankees. Let's talk about carry this point one step further. On one hand, we saw episodes that were viewed by the judges absolutely carry someone to victory, like Kyra Sedgwick. In other cases, we saw it not work. Like you, Chris, were the biggest critic of Bryan Cranston's episode. You said he's not in it enough. It didn't have enough impact. But yet it still won there. There were many other cases. Juliana Margulies, we were betting was going to win despite a weak episode, and that didn't. So we saw this completely schizophrenic outcome. The episode matters. The episode doesn't matter. So what do we take away from all this?
Well, let's talk about that lead actor category, because we all talked in the discussion a few days ago about, how all 6 men had submitted perfectly, and you had 5 who had never won an Emmy before, and one obviously had won 2 in a row. And I guess they just went with the safe choice. I wonder sometimes if a voter can't make up their mind if they just check off a previous winner just because they feel safe with it, just because they feel like, well, nobody complained about him winning last time, so I'll be safe with this pick. I don't know. Not that he's an undeserving winner. He's incredibly good on that show and seems like one of the nicest guys in Hollywood. But I sure would have liked to have seen one of those other 5 men win. It was Matthew Fox's only opportunity to win for Lost. I got to think if Hugh Laurie couldn't win for that episode, there's no way he's ever going to win for this role on House. And then the other guys, I don't know. I guess they'll have a good shot next year because Cranston won't be in the race.
But, Rob, we all had Michael C. Hall out front here. He had won the Globe. He'd won SAG. He had momentum. He had a powerful episode. So how did he lose?
Yeah, I would really like an answer. I'd love to know how it all panned out in that category, because Dexter was obviously liked by the Academy. It won directing. I mean, that was huge for it to be directing.
It won directing over the Lost finale.
Won.
That was really surprising.
That's right. I mean, and over Mad Men, which normally wins pretty much everything. And so I was thinking, Michael C. Hall's going to win this. I was really excited for the announcement, and then Bryan Cranston came out of the mouth, and I just thought, and don't get me wrong, I'm happy for him, but I just thought, what? Really? Again? I don't know what Michael C. Hall can do now to win an Emmy, and Hugh Laurie probably won't ever be nominated again, as far as I'm concerned. I just think the time has now passed for him. I was really shocked, and good on Bryan Cranston. He's a 3-time consecutive Emmy winner. That is impressive and fantastic, but I felt a bit gypped by that whole category, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of the episode matters, the episode doesn't matter, we've often seen historically the longest episode win. And the 2 longest episodes are up this year. Hugh Laurie, a 2-hour episode. Tony Shalhoub, the 2-hour episode. I was betting on Shalhoub simply because I thought that would be the factor that would tip it over. We know they have fallen for that in the past, the voters, because he has won 3 times in the past for a 1-hour episode that was competing against half-hour sitcoms. So the logic of that is, oh my gosh, he's certainly going to win for a 2-hour episode. But wow, it was fascinating. What else did we learn?
I love that Jim Parsons win, by the way. I think I was one of the few predicting that. But there's a great example of a panel looking for a comedic performance, and he definitely gave the best comedic performance, I thought, in that category. And Tony Shalhoub, I admitted on the panel that we did, it was a great performance, but it just wasn't comedic. And I also wonder, his would have been the last one they viewed alphabetically. Is there any possibility? They breeze through 5 30-minute episodes, really 20 minutes when they think they're at the finish line, and they pop Tony Shalhoub in. They got 2 more hours to go.
This is an actual case of a DVD container. This happens to be what variety series here that the Emmys have. And the DVDs are stacked here in one, so they don't really watch them in order. There is an alphabetical listing on the ballot. It used to be by last name. I'm not sure if that's true anymore. But really, Chris, I don't think they really do watch them in any one order. These DVDs tend to be jumbled up.
I've heard some, and they're recommended that they do, and I've actually heard from Emmy voters who say that they follow those recommendations. Now, I'm sure some don't, but I just wondered if that might be a possibility that might have hurt him a little bit. But I think more than anything, Jim Parsons gave just such a funny performance, and he hadn't won before, and Monk was certainly past its time. I think it was a really good award from the Emmys in that particular case.
Yeah, and I think my theory on that one is that the last 2 years in a row, the Emmy voters have given the award to actors and shows that critics and people generally tend to think are cooler or more deserving critically, and all that fuss that is bestowed on the Emmys every time they give the award to Tony Shalhoub. You know, all the critics, how they all start screaming and complaining. I think it's finally starting to cut through a bit, and I think some voters are a little bit concerned about looking old-fashioned or boring or behind the times. And I've just noticed in the last few years they're starting to award shows and trying to look more progressive, perhaps. And I think not giving it to Jim Parsons again for Tony Shalhoub, we would have just heard nothing but that in the papers the next day. That's my theory on that.
Right. There was a real noticeable trend of the cool factor in these awards. And, you know, I was happy about that for the TV Academy because we all love this award and we all want them to have the reputation they deserve. But often when they repeat, very often the TV critics get upset and frustrated. And when the Tony Shalhoubs win, they go, boring, and they beat up on it. So it was great to see the cool factor come through. But for those of us who track this prize as pundits, trying to figure out what do we learn year to year so that we can apply it next year to our predictions, there was a real lesson this year on the cool factor, Rob. What you're saying is there was a consistent trend of voters trying to be cool. Jim Parsons. Yes. Aaron Paul couldn't win last year when he was cool and had a better episode. He suddenly wins. The cool thing may have helped Archie Punjabi win, Edie Falco win, and it certainly helped. Not helped. Pushed The Daily Show through to the victory for Best Variety Series 8 years in a row. The episode of The Daily Show that Stewart submitted was one where he mocks Roland Martin from CNN's Ascot. There isn't a lot of substance to it. It's entertaining. It's not one of the great Daily Show episodes, but it beat some of one of the great Tonight Show episodes of all time, The Farewell from Conan O'Brien. It beat one of the great Saturday Night Live episodes of all time, the Betty White episode. It beat the Colbert Report when he goes to Iraq to entertain U.S. troops and Barack Obama comes beamed in by satellite. It was a brilliant, wonderful episode, beautifully written, and of course won the writing award last week. How did Stewart? Is it just the cool factor that his show wins? It's got to be, right?
I don't know, but I'm sick of it. I'm totally 100% sick of that show winning this category. There are too many good shows on that they need to spread the wealth. I mean, he doesn't even bother to show up anymore. That started happening, I guess, with David Letterman. He wouldn't show up anymore, and they finally took it away from him and started giving it to The Daily Show. Maybe that'll happen next year, but unfortunately next year there won't be a Tonight Show with Conan O'Brien. Of course, he'll have his own show. Colbert maybe doesn't have the powerful episodes. Saturday Night Live maybe doesn't. They certainly don't have Betty White. Maybe he wins next year just by default.
Yeah, look, I know it's disappointing, fellas, but I tend to watch The Daily Show quite regularly, and it. It is still very cool, and everyone still talks about it. And I don't know why he picked that episode, but he had so many others to choose from, like just from memory, where he starts making fun of, this whole reaction to the Prophet Muhammad, how the South Park episode. There was a whole string of episodes around that were absolutely stunningly brilliant. And so I can see why people would vote for him. I'm not necessarily saying he deserved it again, because it is kind of boring, and you just want to switch your TV off when that kind of thing happens. But I do understand why voters just absolutely gravitate towards that kind of thing. It's so cool. Cool. They love it.
Yeah.
When Ricky Gervais opened that envelope, he actually seemed disappointed on behalf of everybody there and everybody at home. Just the look on his face, and I don't know was there a moan in the audience? Because there was a moan.
There was a moan in the press room. Nobody is more beloved by the press than Jon Stewart. He's Mr. Cool, but they all moan. And poor Bryan Cranston, speaking of repeat winners, who came backstage, and nobody wanted to ask him a question. He was almost made to feel unwelcome. Now, everybody loves Breaking Bad. It's a cool show. He's a cool show. But the hostility toward this, we had enough of these repeat wins was certainly settling in. So it was probably a good idea that Jon Stewart didn't show up. Wow. But, But
at least Bryan Cranston won't be eligible next year, so that's a plus for everybody. He won't be able to win an Emmy again next year. Like, they're having a break, so maybe we can give it to Michael C. Hall. Who knows?